So what is your goal in Toastmaster? Take your time.
My overall goal is to try to challenge myself and to work through, like, if I mess up, if I pause in the speech where I didn't intend to, just if I second guess myself, try to work through that so that even in my head I might feel like, oh crap, the audience doesn't see it. So just more confidence overall. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for helping me feel so welcome in doing my first icebreaker speech. Before I start, I want to share that I am trained in strategic sharing. Some things that I'm going to share are personal, but I am well aware of the impact of sharing them, and I still choose to share them. So my hope is that you glean from what I am going to share. But for now, I want to propose to you a question. Have you ever heard about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature wrong, it grew and walked without having feet. Funny it seems, by following its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. So we pay homage to from the concrete that grew when no one else cared. That is a poem from Tupac Shakur that years ago. And in so many ways, it encompasses my life. But in hearing that, one may ask, rightfully so, how does a rose grow from concrete? Well, the question alone flies in the face of everything we know about science, about flowers, about concrete. Concrete is not something that is edifying, nurturing. It's not something that gives in any way. So the idea, even the imagery, that from concrete, therein lies a rose, was something that I really grew to appreciate throughout my life. I like this poem because it speaks to not only the rose, but the conditions that bred it, and the impossibility of a rose growing from a crack in concrete. In wondering how this, in any capacity, I had to figure out how this could occur. And so from there, I thought about taking it back to the very beginning, and I thought about the concept of a seed. We know that seed is a life-giving entity, but in order for a seed to give life, it has to be buried. So when it is buried, the elements come, the pressures come, the dirt comes, the soil comes, and with that, it becomes an incubator for that seed. It begins to nurture that seed. Some may argue that a seed may be a person, it may be a thought, it may be an act. For me, it is both a person and a thought. As I go through my speech, you'll understand why. In introducing myself to you guys, being new here, I struggle with how much of myself to share and what you would be interested in as an audience. Well, 4 minutes and 6 seconds, or 4 minutes to 6 minutes, either way, that's not a lot of time for you to get to know me as a woman, or mother, or a social worker, or a foster child. Like the rose, I have overcome adversity that could have and should have choked the life out of me. That concrete could have been my grave versus my base. Statistically, it is impossible for a rose to grow simply from concrete. We know this. As one would guess, it would be hard for a rose to grow from concrete. I'll give you guys another statistic. There are 687,000 foster children as of 2016 in this country. Not the world, just this country. From that 687,000, only 3% would graduate with their college bachelor's degree. That is a very low number considering the 687,000 children that will enter our foster care system. foster care in and of itself would become a huge slab of concrete within my life. The concrete continued to be poured, the storms continued to come, while I continued to water my own seed. I continued to nurture my seed, to weed my seed, but the concrete continued to pour. And the concrete, it sounds funny what I want to say, but it actually gave. And if you think about it, what could a seed do? What could it glean from concrete? And it's simply just a place to grow. The concrete was poured and it took on various forms in my life. It took on domestic violence as far back as I can remember in my home. It took on burying my infant brother at the age of 7. And while the preacher was giving his eulogy, the concrete gave. I was told I couldn't cry because my younger brothers and sisters were looking up to me, and that's a lesson that continued throughout my life. But there are no tears from me because I grew from the concrete. The concrete continued to give through the molestation of a female cousin and a rape by the time I was 12. But the concrete was not done giving. The concrete gave this seed a mother who was addicted to crack and chose that drug more times than she can remember over her children. The concrete continued to give and gave this seed a father that battled alcoholism and ended up leaving the home because of conflict with the mother. The concrete continued to give. Through this concrete, more was given to the seed in the form of teenage pregnancy that resulted in 2 kids, one of which would later to be diagnosed as autistic. Finally, the concrete gave up to the world an 18-year-old broken girl that had survived a broken foster care system. I try not to say broken because I still work for the people. And a lot of healing and growing to do herself. So can we say the concrete gave? The concrete gave. Yet I stand before you today, the rose that grew from the crack in the concrete. The reason why I picked this poem is because it speaks to a foundation in a situation from which one typically does not grow, that one typically does not thrive, let alone prosper. The reason why I'm out there is because all of this is who I am. I am a foster child. I am a survivor. And I can only sum it up to say I'm an overcomer. To take anything away from that cheats you out of who I am. So I wanted to put it all out there to you. I stand before you today, sane, having got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, having achieved home ownership by the time I was 30, that both of my teenage kids, even my autistic son, are now in college, and now I work at the agency that removed me from my family. Granted, I know that God was on my side. He could have even been the impetus that kept me going. But I wanted to introduce myself to you as the rose that grew from concrete. Thank you.